today we're going to talk about the difference between emoji and emoticon. Um, so you guys are like, what? So, anyways, emoticons. Back in the day, probably around the 90s. Uh, so the internet's been around since the 50s. It was invented by the military, and it shared information on mostly weather, but originally it was just these different networks that were connected. It was originally called the ARPANET, which I forget what the acronym for ARPA was, but it was used by the military to share weather information from different parts of the globe. Eventually, those connections got connected to other connections, and the internet was born. I think it was in the 80s. Two universities on the West Coast sent the first email or correspondence from one computer to another, and so on and so forth. Well, an emoticon, and I'll give you the background behind that. An emoticon is a way to express emotion. So when you send an email to somebody, if I say, I really like tater tots, like that could mean anything, right? It could mean I really like tater tots, or it could mean I really like tater tots. When you talk to people, we read each other's body language and facial expression to determine their emotion. But when you get an email or a text message, you can't read it. So emoticons were a way to express emotions, but these are literally keyboard characters, right? So a smiley face, if you type a colon, a dash, and then a parentheses, that was how you type a smiley face in the early days of the internet. A smiley face with glasses was the number 8, a dash, and then a parentheses. A wink was a semicolon, dash. Crying looked like this. And to express love or heart or appreciation, you would do less than 3, which looks like a heart. So they didn't have the bandwidth because the internet was so slow. So as the internet improved, eventually they replaced these things with what are called emojis. Now, emojis are the same thing, except they're just actual images. So in the early days of the internet, it would be insane to try to send a colorful image because the internet was just too slow. It was too much data. And so as the internet improved, they said, well, why instead of typing these keyboard strokes, why don't we just make a menu where you could actually just click and send an image? And this is what you guys are used to using, okay? So this is an emojicon, or emoticon, I guess is how you pronounce it. And this is an emoji, okay? Well, they are the same thing, but it's a subtle difference. This is a picture. This is not a picture. These are the same meanings, but these are the things that we use to express things. So where does this all come from? So, and this is the last thing, and then we'll be done and we can move on. An emoticon is a word or a combination of words. So it really means emotional icon. Okay. In 1982, Carnegie Mellon University posted a gag on an online message board. So before what you guys consider to be social media, online, you know how like a discussion thread on Facebook is? Online message boards were very similar to just the discussion thread, except there were no images. There were no usernames. People would just post stuff. And eventually they had usernames, and it was like the early days of Twitter, except it wasn't Twitter. Twitter, you could add images, you could add videos, you could add links. People just shared stuff. And so what they did is they posted a fake mercury spill. So keep in mind that Carnegie Mellon is a world-renowned university that's known for doing research, but they thought it'd be funny to post a gag. Well, anyways, this gag was not well received because they didn't know if it was serious or a joke. So it was intended to be a joke, and they didn't know it was serious or not. So some people thought it was serious. So at that point in time, Dr. Scott Fahlman, who's a computer scientist from Carnegie Mellon, said that jokes and non-jokes should be identified by keyboard strokes because they didn't have these images. This was all being invented in 1982. And so he actually is the inventor of the smiley face. It was his idea to type these characters to make a smiley face. In other words, he was responsible for creating this, okay? So emoticons are punctuation marks, letters, and numbers used to express emotions. Emojis As the internet got better and bandwidth and technology increased, the ability to express emotion was the same. Emojis are the same as emoticons, but they use pictures instead of keyboard characters. So again, and I don't want to beat this to death, but a smiley face with an emoticon is this. A smiley face with an emoji is this. Okay? And so that's really the difference between them. Any questions? Fascinating stuff, isn't it?